There are parents out there who continue to have, children and grow into these large family to use their children for resources and money that they often don't share. This commenter says, I agree with this. I'm concerned for a couple of content creators that I watch who have large families. The kids are back to back and the husband doesn't let the wife breathe. No, it doesn't appear that they're struggling, but the more I watch, the more questions I have. The children suffer to a degree as well. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist, and I've spoken about parents who use their children for content, but there are parents who will use their children and continue to have babies and children to elicit money and resources and now validation from social media. And this is an ever-growing phenomenon, so much so that there had to be policies around this. And even TikTok, I feel like, I forget what it was. I remember it was last year, but someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the policy was like if your children are on TikTok and you make money from your TikTok, you have to set up a separate trust for your children so that the money that they make is set aside for them. That is not all of your money and things like that. And there was also something too, and I forget, there was like another aspect of it where like people had to leave California and go to Tennessee, something like that, in order to be able to make money using their children, something to that effect. But anyhow, it's, people were going through extreme measures to make money off of their children. And a lot of times, these are not happy homes. These are homes and where we have to smile for the camera and really put on a dog and pony show to fool everybody out there watching. And it's interesting, these super large families. And, I've actually looked at a couple of them and, I'm not going to say any names, but pretty much almost all of them have caused me to be concerned. These kids don't strike me as happy children. And what I've noticed about these big families with all these kids that they're using for social media, they tend to get all these big gadgets. And, when they get all these big cooking gadgets and things like that, food and stuff is often centered around that. But the children don't look well kept. The children don't look happy. A lot of the children that I've seen, they don't talk, especially when they're little kids. Quite a few of them I've seen are very mute, and those are just not very talkative. They're not smiley, happy, bubbly children. They're not expressive. And for a large family, that's very telling when you have kids that are almost too perfect and they're quiet like a church mouse. They're also not well kept either, so they're kind of their clothes don't look like they don't look like they're taking their children shopping or getting their hair done and that they're kept up. They look like their children are being performative. The children also don't interact with their parents either. So there's not a whole lot of engagement. It's almost like they quietly walk up to get a plate. There may be some talking here and there, but it's very, very sparse. It doesn't look like a family that engages on the regular, or a family where the children, just looking at the body language, it doesn't look like a family that jives together. It just looks like we're here, we know what we're supposed to do. So, in other words, there may be abuse, and I suspect there might be some abusive and toxic behaviors that go on behind the screen, because there's a lot of, just in their interactions you can see. And like you were saying, the wife is not able to breathe. And so you may have a husband that is hovering. You also may have a wife that is hovering over the husband as well, who appears to be super dominant and does things her way and is often in charge of the camera time. So depending, it can vary based on the families that I've seen, but usually there is a very dominant force. One of the families that I'm reminded of that I can remember doing this way back in the day was John and Kate plus eight. And that is a family that, it had a very sad ending in a lot of ways. But they were one of the first families I remember that were like monetizing off of all of their children. But it was, there was a lot of stuff that was going on behind the cameras. Very sad situation. So people who do this, there may be abuse going on. There's certainly resource hoarding, money and resource hoarding. So people may be using their children, these large families, and you usually almost always see a baby on the mother's arm or toddler, and it's baby after baby after baby. But those resources don't seem to be spent appropriately or used appropriately unless there's a camera pointed at these children, or unless the children they're putting on airs for someone or something. But a lot of the large families, from the 90s that were on TV that are coming out now and talking, there's a lot of stuff that they're reporting that goes on behind the scenes. And even now, there's large families on camera, on television shows. And boy, they've got some serious stuff going on back there. So while people don't appear to be struggling on camera, I do think that the signs are there and you can read in between the lines. I also think that, and this is just me, I think that social media has an ethical responsibility. And I think that one of the reasons that TikTok and other platforms were putting things into place, from what I recall last year, is because they also knew, they may know of some things that are going on behind the scenes, money being misappropriated, and people using their kids in ways that are not healthy, not appropriate. We've also talked about how, women may have used their children to lure men. So they're offering their toddler to grown men on social media in order to lure in the attention of men. I've done videos on that as well. But thank you so much for bringing this up. This is very real. It's been happening for, a long time now. I wish the best for all families, for all the children, but I do know that, like, usually when you're asked to be performative in front of the camera like that for a large audience, there can also be a lot that goes on behind the screens as well. Thanks so much.